Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to day 3 of the NWR Communications Small Cap Investor Conference. On the call this morning, we have Michael Carroll from Synertec. This is a very exciting week for Synertec, given the announcements and the price action they've achieved in the market. Synertec provides mission-critical engineering products and solutions to complex, high-risk and highly regulated industries. The company targets segments that have got high barriers to entry and high client reputational risk. So that includes pharma, critical infrastructure, oil and gas, water and defence. The company's delivered 24 years of growth now and development as a multidisciplined and integrated consulting business. They do deliver end-to-end proprietary engineering products and solutions, and all of this leverages the company's ability to develop commercial IP through innovative partnerships with a portfolio of blue chip customers. So Michael Carroll on the call is a founding principal of Synertec. Since the company's inception, Michael's worked extensively in designing and delivering high-risk, complex and highly regulated processing and manufacturing facilities for many different industries. As managing director, Michael ensures the early concepts and planning studies are robust and risks are identified and managed accordingly. I'll pass over to you at this point, Michael, to start your presentation. For any attendees on the call, feel free to submit questions as we go through the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So Michael, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks everybody for your time and your interest, and thanks Tim for organising this, much appreciated. So I'll launch right into it because I'm anticipating that we'll finish this in about 20 minutes and then take questions. So just to explain a bit about Synertec, essentially Synertec is an engineering company, as Tim explained, where we target the things that keep our clients awake, the mission critical things. And we have a blue chip client base, which have developed over 24 years. And through our deep relationships with that client base, we get exposed to some very interesting data, some big trends in global movements and so forth. So that's probably the real, I suppose, core of our business right now, is that we are an engineering group, mission critical, and we look for IP, which helps our clients in their businesses. So I won't talk specifically to the slides. I'll talk around the slides, and you can go back and, for your own reference down the track, look at that, look at our slides. So moving on, just a bit of a corporate snapshot of our business here. And I just sort of draw your attention to the bottom left there and make the point that 20% of the shares are owned by senior management and the board, and there's a breakdown of that there. We have two streams to our business. We have our engineering consultancy business, which I'll explain a bit more of, and we have the technology design and development, which these two in my mind go hand in hand. You can't import innovation. You have to have it part of your core. And so the engineering is important in developing the design, developing the technology. We operate almost exclusively in the rail, water, pharma and oil and gas sectors. And of course, you'll know that rail is a very big part of the Victorian economy in the engineering space right now. Water is ongoing, always has been. But interestingly, with the COVID experience, Synertec is probably the most, if not one of the most credentialed pharmaceutical biotechnology consultancies in Australia. It's what we did from day one. And we've got some fantastic projects, which I think will bring us to the table in Australia's response to the global pandemic and sovereign capability in medicines and so forth. And oil and gas, we'll talk about that as we proceed. Just moving on. So there's a bit of a snapshot of our client base, and you'll be aware of some of them, if not all of them. But importantly, 80% of our revenue comes from repeat clients. And so our relationships are deep, they're valued, and these are big companies. So we do get great opportunities. They're forward-thinking companies. We get exposure to their latest thinking, and it's it's very handy for us, and we work really hard at maintaining these relationships. So one of their core capabilities, we just sort of thought we'd break out just one small slice of what we do for a lot of these companies, and that's the automation and the functional safety. And you can see just from the Oxford Economics data there that this is the automation side of things, the big data, that's huge. But just one small slice, which is the functional safety, you can see the dollars and the growth there that we are targeting. It's quite phenomenal. We're in a very interesting period, I think, and embarking on something pretty special in the engineering field. So moving pretty quickly, I've spoken about the engineering, and so the other part of our business is the technology design and development, which we've made some announcements recently, Greentech and the CTS, which stands for Custody Transfer System around LNG. So we're going to talk now about the development side of our business. So coming to, I suppose we'll start with the Greentech because it's the most recent announcement, and it seems to have struck a chord within the market, that's for sure. So I suppose most of the interest is around that. So within China's been very upfront in saying that they want to be energy independent, and they import a lot of LNG right now. I think they're probably the biggest importer in the world, or not, if not the second biggest importer in the world. They want to be energy independent. They are environmentally responsible, and they do have tight environmental regulations around the exploration and the processing of their fields. But probably more importantly, they do have a political will. And I suppose the political will in China is something, you know, when they say they're going to do something, they can do it, and they do it. So in terms of the shale gas that we're focusing on, I just thought it might be interesting that they do have some challenges in the geology where they actually are extracting the gas is difficult, and they've got to their experience is that they have to drill a whole lot deeper than, say, the American experience or indeed the Australian experience. So then in doing that, they produce a whole lot more drilling mud. And just to give you a very quick recap on what drilling mud is as the bore is traveling through the earth, the drilling mud is pumped down the hole, and it has several purposes. It lubricates the drill bit, it cools the drill bit, but it also helps flush out the cuttings from the hole. And so this is a recycled process. And every now and again, they might hit some geology, which is hard, and they need to enhance the formulation of the mud by putting some sort of hydrocarbon in there. And hence this is where the contamination, potentially, there's other parts of where the contamination can originate from, but in this regard, they're lubricating up the drill bit a bit further. And so that's our opportunity there, is to take that mud and turn it into something which is useful. So I've included here some evidence from a recent article. You'll see that's very, very recent, 20th of October, 2020. I'll leave you to have a look at that, but that's confirming China's aspirations, and that they are very ambitious indeed. So moving on, again, there's too much on this slide for me to talk to, but I'll just draw your attention to the bottom right-hand corner, the picture here. That is the consistency of the drilling mud, and you can see that it's very sloppy, it's very wet. These aren't stock photos. These are photos of Greentech personnel participating at a drill site. So that's the consistency. Hopefully you can see that from that photograph. Then if you move over to the green machine on the left here, this is actually the prototype machine that Greentech have been working on with some input from ourselves. And you can see that once you can see at the end of this is where it goes into the bin. It's pretty hard to see, I know. You've got to be very careful where you take these photos, because it is actually a hazardous area, and you've got to stay fair way away just in case there is a hazardous atmosphere. It's not unusual for any drilling site. So by processing through this machine, the composite dry powder almost immediately dehydrates the mud, and it also binds up any hydrocarbons that may have been added to the mud, as I previously described, and it then stops that mud, the hydrocarbons from leaching out of the treated sludge. And then within, say, 24 hours, that middle picture there, that is what you have as the end product. And of course, that end product then can then be further value added to bricks and so forth. And we are talking very interestingly with some people who we're going to collaborate with to be able to take the dried sludge and turn it into bricks. And in fact, I thought that this was a bit of a, what would you say, a bit of the cherry on top, but in fact, the state-owned enterprises in China aren't just interested in the dried sludge. They want to see what was a waste product being processed to materials which can help in the construction boom they're anticipating over the next 5 to 10 years. And so the brick manufacturing, the repurposing of the dry sludge to bricks is becoming more important from a political point of view than anything else. So I suppose you've got to have some luck in business sometime, and the brick manufacturing may have been our bit of luck here. So we're working very diligently now to bring the brick manufacturing facility up to regulation, and we'll see how that goes from there. Synertec is, we think the IP protection is incredibly important. So we engaged our local, our Australian-based patent attorney to take what was a provisional patent in China, and we'll take charge of making the global application there. So just, I think that'll it will stay under the Greentech banner because China's very protective of how any IP that exits out of China. It's one of the things that they control very tightly. So it's easy for us to leave it under Greentech, but we hope that'll all be tied up in the deal if it eventuates down the track. So just a bit about the Greentech state of play, just to bring you up to speed on that. I think what we have here is they have a capacity. We have a capacity to lend them $1 million. They've drawn down about 800,000 of that. That money's been spent on developing the machinery, buying chemicals and mobilisation on site, and conducting extensive trials. Where Greentech have earned to date about $900,000 of revenue. And just to recap what we've said was that Synertec has an option to acquire Greentech, dependent on some conditions that they have to, some hurdles that they have to meet. The other part of our technology portfolio is in the LNG sector. And again, we've a very deep relationship with Bechtel, Chevron, Osaka Gas led us to this opportunity. We worked on APLNG, QCLNG, Gorgon, Wheatstone, just about every LNG facility in Australia, if not all. And we've developed a custody transfer system for the LNG. Now, the analogy is that the petrol bowser, where you fill up your car, you can imagine this is the petrol bowser for these mega facilities. The difference is, I suppose, the value of what's been transferred. And so you can imagine if you have a facility which is generating in the order of 5 billion revenue, that's not a particularly large facility. If you're out by 0.5%, you could either be overcharging or undercharging your client $25 million a year for the life of the facility. And you either have to, you risk missing on revenue, or I suppose at the very least upsetting your client where you're locked into long-term contracts. So it's very important that you have as precise a custody transfer system as possible, and that you can prove that it is such. And that's what our custody transfer does. And it's been recognized by the likes of Bechtel and Chevron, Exxon as as the best system in the world. Problem is with these big facilities, they're very lumpy, and there's a long time between drinks. But in working on these land-based custody transfer systems, we actually moved to seeing a opportunity in the marine-based system. And I'm going to skip through this slide here because I can see that time is getting away from me already, but you can go back. But this is just a validation of the market and what we're talking about, and a couple of our alliances that we have going. But more interestingly, in the marine-based LNG custody transfer system, the analogy is the electric car. You've got these electric cars being built, but you've got to have the power stations in which to plug into. So right now, due to a change in regulations because of the International Maritime Organization has stipulated that you've got to have sulfur fuel of less than 0.5%, I think, mass on mass. It's really hard to get to with the bunkering fuel, impossible with the traditional bunkering fuel, which was like 4.5%, these sorts of values. So there's a big move to power the ships via LNG. And so just to sort of give you an idea of the size of the market there is that there's something in the order of 184 LNG ships that are on order, and there's 170 of them running around the various coastlines now. And so our opportunity is to develop a marine-based custody transfer system, which can either be on ships or on the FPSOs, which then transfers to ships. And right now, there isn't really a great solution. And what we've developed is a concept which we are working closely with a major player in the marine LNG space. And we hope to be able to make some announcements about that in the coming weeks if it so develops. But this to us is a real opportunity because we can offer novel leasing arrangements for this technology, fully maintained, which in effect will give us, if we can get this, and I must say this is in development. Got to be careful with the way the share price went yesterday. I just don't want to overstate things. These things are in development, but they are coming along very nicely. So we hope to be able to then offer the market a unique financing opportunity where they don't pay for anything up front, and we can maintain and basically derive a annuity, if you like, from maintaining the systems for them. I'll just to recap. There's that picture on the left is straight out of our annual report, so you can go to our annual report. It's out and get the detail of our business. But just to recap, we are a specialist engineering company with deep client relationships, blue chip client relationships, and we are always looking for the opportunity to have an IP protected, tech driven solution to the deepest problems of our clients. The Greentech Synertec alliance, I think, is progressing well. It is still, we started on the spectrum of, at the 1 kilogram scale. We've developed machinery. We're now at the thousands of kilogram scale. There is still a way to go in developing that, but I'm feeling quite confident in that we will get to a system which is going to be great for our clients. And of course, the custody transfer system, where, as I say, we're working closely with some big industry players to develop and bring that online. I suppose the other thing is I wanted to highlight that the idea that we would be looking at China as a big opportunity and actively working towards China as a big opportunity hasn't happened overnight. Po Kiat, one of our directors, has some 30 or 40 years experience in dealing with China. He was good enough to come on our board when we listed. And Dennis Lin is a relatively recent addition to our board, again, with extensive cross-border experience. And Leanne was our founding chair, and I'll just highlight the strength of her as chair, as a director of Snowy Hydro, Director of Oricon, Mining 3, Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and an engineer. So, you know, a fantastic chair for us in this space. So I think that probably is all I want to say. I thank Dave Harris for all the work in getting this together, and his tireless efforts in negotiating and steering our partners as well. So I might hand back to you, Tim.
Thanks very much, Michael. Very good presentation. We have had questions come in over the last few minutes, so I'll just remind everyone you can submit your questions via the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. Michael, the question regarding Greentech that's come in is, will the company pursue an equity stake in Greentech, possibly converting the current loan and extending the loan?
The answer is yes to all of those. They are all on the table, pending some very stringent conditions that we've put on Greentech, which I must say Greentech are working very diligently to get over those hurdles. So all of those things are on the table for sure.
Thanks, Michael. And so still within that side of the business, can you share the product economics and the scale potential of the CDP technology?
Yes. The exact number, just in the China experience, the exact number is hard to get. There's estimates of between 8,000 and 12,000 wells over the next 18 months or so. Our economics are that we anticipate revenue in the order of between 300,000 and 400,000 Australian dollars per well. And we have also expectations on gross profit for those, which I won't share with you right now, but just to give you the size of the market, we're talking billions just in China alone. The Australian experience is that you've got Narrabri, you've got some other wells coming through. We would anticipate over the next 2 years that there's somewhere between 250 and 400 wells in Australia. And just to sort of elaborate a bit further, our strategy is that we're going very hard on the Chinese opportunity to set up Greentech, but we're also concurrently looking at the Australian market, and we are approaching the Australian market. We've employed a person to do that. And so we see that we can, not long after the Chinese market takes off, we will be following with all the learnings from the technology in that market. We hope to be able to bring to the Australian experience.
Sounds good, Michael. Another one that's come in, can you please clarify who owns and where all of the intellectual property across the company is located? And are you able to clarify what you meant by the prospect of IP being stuck in China in your presentation?
I'll start with the last question. I'll start with that one. We had a desire to bring the Greentech IP straight into Australia. However, our lawyers in China advised that it's very, very difficult to get the IP, the patents, to be released out of China and into an Australian entity. So ideally, for the easiest way home, you have to leave it in the Chinese entity. But if the deal progresses as we hope, we will have a very significant stake in Greentech, the Chinese entity anyway. So, okay, we will have control of that anyway, without ruffling any feathers, so to speak. The other part of the question, sorry, can you remind me, please, Tim?
The other part of the question was sort of clarifying who owns and where all the IP of the company is located, sort of, I guess, looking across. We can interpret that question, I suppose, as looking across your business, including your engineering consulting.
It's owned by Synertec, yeah. All the patents around the CTS are owned by Synertec.
Yeah. So still on Greentech, the question that's come in is how should we think about the prospect of Australian trials of the Greentech technology, and when potentially would you think that Aussie trials might be complete?
We've reached out to our client base. I won't you can see the client base that we've had. There's several of those in there that we've had discussions with. We've explained what's going on in China, and they are very interested in exploring that opportunity for us to come onto one of their sites and either remediate a site, or as they're doing a new drill, dealing with their mud. So we haven't as yet got a contract where we can put our hand on our heart and say we're going to be able to process their mud. I would anticipate that within 6 months we will be deep in a trial in the Australian market. Thanks,
Michael. And so, looking back to your base business, the engineering business, have there been increased inquiries from reshoring of complex manufacturing to Australia, whether from the pharma sector or other sectors?
Absolutely. Pharma is one of our founding disciplines, I suppose, and so it's had its ebbs and flows over the years. And right now we're getting unprecedented inquiry about people trying to, well, I suppose not just people, but major organisations, governments looking to bolster sovereign capability in a whole lot of therapies.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks to all attendees for your questions today. That concludes our presentation. So, Michael, I'll hand back to you for any closing comments.
Well, no, not too many closing comments. Just thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Tim, for organising it. And yes, if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate. David and myself will do our best to answer them.
Very good. Thanks, Michael, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Catch you next time.
Bye now.